Hey, it's Mike Hambright with FlipNerd.com. Welcome back for another exciting VIP interview where I interview successful real estate investing experts and entrepreneurs in our industry to help you learn and grow. Today, I'm joined by Blake McCreight. He's the COO of Midwest Equity Partner, a turnkey rental property provider with a team that has actually done thousands of deals. Blake has a ton of experience, especially on the operations side, and today he's going to share his knowledge with us. Specifically, we're going to discuss how to be successful in real estate investing by leveraging other people's systems, knowledge, and resources. It's something that doesn't get talked about enough because it's really not the sexy side of the business. But at the end of the day, if you want this to be a business and not a hobby, you have to learn how to use leverage, and it's not just financial leverage. So before we get started, though, let's take a moment to recognize our featured sponsors. RealtyMogul.com is an online marketplace for real estate investing, connecting borrowers and capital from accredited and institutional investors. Get a rehab loan fast and close in as little as 10 days. Rates start as low as 9%. We'd also like to thank National Real Estate Insurance Group, the nation's leading provider of insurance to the residential real estate investor market. From individual properties to large-scale investors, National Real Estate Insurance Group is ready to serve you. Please note, the views and opinions expressed by the individuals in this program do not necessarily reflect those of FlipNerd.com or any of its partners, advertisers, or affiliates. Please consult professionals before making any investment or tax decisions, as real estate investing can be risky. Hey, Blake, welcome to the show.
Hi, Mike. How are you?
Good, good. Glad to have you here. Just to share with the people watching today, we're actually from the same kind of general hometown in Western Illinois, so it's always good to meet a hometown friend.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Glad you're here. So, hey, before we get started, I'm excited to talk about this stuff because, there's so many people in real estate that talk about the so-called sexy side of the business, which is, holding a check that, you just left the title company with, which, personally, I never go to title companies. I don't know who actually does that, but what's really important is that a lot of people, I talk about this a lot. We talk about this a lot on the show, is how to treat real estate investing like a business and not a hobby. So I'm excited to kind of talk about using leverage and using other people's knowledge and resources and all those things because they don't get talked about enough, quite frankly.
No, you're absolutely right. They really don't. And it is fun to, as you said, I haven't had a check in hand for a while. Usually it's nice to see that wire come in.
Yeah.
But that is the sexy side, but there's a lot more to it. And I think a lot of investors, they miss out on that part of it. You get to hear the sizzle, but how do you get what's the work that
how
goes
do you
into
rinse and repeat that? That's right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Hey, before we get started, though, why don't you take a couple minutes and introduce yourself and tell us about your background?
Absolutely. I grew up here in the Midwest, as you said. We're from the Quad City area. Yeah. So grew up in a real small town, went to college in Rock Island, Augustana College, and was the first one in my family to go to get a 4-year degree. So it was kind of the whole, as we all hear, go to school, get good grades, get a great job, and move on. So after college, I moved up to Chicago, started working for Wells Fargo in the corporate world, and was to what I felt was pretty successful, making decent money, but just kind of realized that as I continued to move up the corporate chain, a little bit more money, but less and less time. So. Yeah.
And a predetermined chain for the most part, right?
Yeah, absolutely. you knew what was going to happen.
Yeah.
So it wasn't super exciting, and I just happened to be doing loans for investors in that here in the Chicago area, and saw an opportunity. I'm like, I need to own real estate, and so I made the decision to start buying back in the Quad Cities. Yeah. Buying rental properties. So I kind of did the whole corporate gig for about 8 years. Yeah,
it's interesting how similar our backgrounds are because I went to Illinois State, but we grew up in the same town. I went to local, fairly local college. Moved to Chicago. I actually worked for a large bank. I worked for Northern Trust actually. Okay. And you just kind of dismayed with working for the man almost immediately. It's like, wait, this, even going to college and having a finance undergrad, they talk about things were very academic, banking, investments, very broad tracks. And then you get in and you're like, wait a minute, I'm like an auditor in a cube somewhere that I have no control over anything, including my own destiny. And so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I learned real fast that it was just probably long term. I like work. I'm not afraid to get in and work, right?
Yeah.
So, you start working for somebody else, and it's like, man, working 50, 60 hours, but then I want a vacation, and you got to beg for it.
Right.
So just, it's one thing to be in your own control.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's where real estate's there.
Yeah. So talk about the transition of going from, buying a few rental properties to kind of where you are today, being part of a team that does huge volume and provides rental properties for other folks.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, 2006, when I was still working for Wells, I bought probably 12, 14 units in about 90 days. And I bought it all with bank financing, because that was at the time, if you could breathe, you could get a loan.
Yeah.
So took advantage of that, but I kind of got nervous. I didn't know if I knew really what I was doing. So luckily, the market crashed, but luckily they were cash flowing deals. So I kind of took a 2-year break. Market crashed, and then I got with who had become really successful in real estate. I sat down with him and kind of learned how to. I started out learning how to wholesale. So I started going out finding. Build a buyer's list like they teach you. Going out and find properties for them, and then it was kind of after I did probably 4 or 5, 6 deals, I figured out there was a deal that was like almost the kitchen was completely done, remodeled for a flip. And really only needed about an extra $20,000 in work. And I asked the lady why are you selling this at such a wholesale price? And she had paid 2 contractors way more money than she should have.
Yeah.
And so it was at that point I partnered with her. I made some decent money from wholesaling, and so I'm like, well, why don't I put up the cash to finish out the rehab, and then we'll split the profit. And and then I'll pay you what you want in like 90 days or 120 days when we sell it. So we did it, and it was at that point that I kind of realized you can leverage other people, their money and time, and I didn't have to come up with as much cash in that particular deal, because I told her I needed to save my money.
Yeah.
She's like, why wouldn't you just buy the house today from me? And I'm like, well, I could keep my money in the bank and maybe use it for something else. The truth was I didn't even have the cash. I just had the 20 to 30,000 to actually finish off the rehab.
Yeah.
So at that point I realized, like, wow, I can partner with somebody else and leverage their money, and I still made a nice it was probably $12,000-15,000 off that particular deal.
Yeah.
So from there, the guy that Matt Larson, who I partnered with, and he kind of started mentoring me. He started seeing me doing a bunch of deals, and so we kind of put together a program here in Chicago where I was finding the acquisitions, managing the rehabs, and then we had a high school friend that lived out in California. He was in the commercial business, and so he started bringing money to the table. Excuse me. He started bringing investors to the table, so we'd buy them, rehab them, put tenants in, and then we would sell them to the California buyers.
Yeah.
Because their money, for $400,000 or $500,000 out there, they could buy,
right.
A whole lot more here in the Midwest.
Absolutely.
So it just kind of evolved from there. One of the things that I kind of realized too was having a system in place, the same type of rehab every single time, having a good teams, good contractors, a good attorney. Like basically the investors from California, all they had to do was make a phone call. We had the insurance set up for our team, for the insurance company, title company, everything involved for them. So they didn't really have to do anything other than wire the money. Yeah,
what's interesting is these things are so critical. It's funny that we're talking about it. It's so obvious to you and me, right? Right. Whenever we buy a house, we kick off a task list. We use a specific task management tool. And, we have these pre-made lists that are, we rename it for 123 Main Street, and it's like, boom, 70 tasks to go do. And they're pretty much the same 70 as the last house. And,
right.
What a lot of people see, I think, when they're newer to real estate is kind of the sexy side. But the operational side, if done right, this business is not sexy at all. Right? It's like that's not fun, but you got to do it if you want to do it again and again and again, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's, we have like a 4-step program of acquiring, renovating, leasing, and then obviously managing the properties. And, just for acquiring, I mean, there's several steps that go into that one portion of it.
Absolutely.
That make it kind of, it's for the new investor getting into it, we make it real easy for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And so for newer investors, I think they tend to kind of fall in one of two camps. One is they don't see the operational side, how important it is to be kind of buttoned up, the business side of it, really.
Right.
And therefore they think they can do it on their own, which a lot of people do it themselves, don't get me wrong. But to be able to do it consistently and do it over and over and over again, you need to have some operations and some efficiency there, right? Or there's the people that partner with somebody, but that's mainly a partner to help alleviate some of the fear. It's like, I'll jump if we hold hands,
Sure.
But without necessarily defining who is going to do what and kind of truly leveraging each other. Like they're both doing the same things and trying to learn together without saying, let's divide and conquer. I mean, you probably see the same thing.
Well, yeah, that's kind of how it started. So, I mean, if you look at our company, Midwest Equity Partner, Matt and I, we grew up together and we started doing deals together. And then Matt met Nate, who's from Minneapolis, and they started doing some deals together. And then I got to know Nate and his wife fairly well. And then the three of us started doing deals together, like off and on. Nate would have a buyer or somebody with cash, and we would sell him a house, or Nate would have some extra private money that he needed to capital to put to work. So we buy a property and use the private money that way. So we realized though that through that, we were better off as the three of us joining forces full time. We still do some of our own things, but for the most part, in 2014 and going into this year, we've really streamlined our teams and operations to work cohesively together to allow us to do the number of deals that we do.
Yeah. Maybe from your lessons of learned of kind of coming together, maybe you could kind of share some lessons to people too, how to find partners that kind of complement their skill set or fill a void in terms of resources they would need, so that they're not just, because sometimes what I see is people that are pretty much carbon copies of each other. It's like, wait, so you're both really bad at that part of it? Like you don't necessarily you might make great people to like sit at a bar and have a drink with, but business wise, like you guys are both good at the same things and you're both bad at the same things. How's that going to work?
Sure. No, yeah, exactly. So I mean, it whether it's by luck or by chance, but I mean, I think Matt's really a systems guy. He's really good at creating systems. He enjoys that part of the business.
Yep.
And I think from my standpoint, I'm good at managing contractors and putting the people in the right place and overseeing those processes. And Nate's strengths is he's really good at raising capital. So I think I think in the common ground between the three of us is not one of us is greedy. And I think we're always humble, and that's really important in partnerships, right? Because a lot of times I get a question like, well, how do you have a partner, and aren't you afraid they're going to steal money from you? And all these, and it's crazy because there's not one night I go to bed wondering if money's going to be taken from me or one of my partners is trying to get, I don't know, there must be something in real estate where that stuff happens.
Yeah.
It's not.
Well, you guys are also Midwestern guys. It's a little bit different if you're, I mean, that's the truth actually. So.
I wasn't going to say that, but since you brought that,
well, you could say because I'm from there too. So I don't live there anymore, but I'm very humble and trustworthy.
Yeah, there's something to be said about us.
Yeah,
Midwestern. So it's we've kind of whether it just kind of fell into was lucky or whatnot, but I think it was meant to be just based on figuring out what everyone's strengths are, and I don't try to overstep. Be like, oh well, I got to be the money raising guy and. I'm good at being the boots on the ground and out in the field on a day-to-day basis, overseeing the crews, and we have a field coordinator that manages it on a day-to-day basis, but I'm still out, spot checking how things are going.
Right. So maybe share a few examples of, things that you can leverage. Like we just talked about how you guys leverage each other's kind of core competencies to form a team. Your business kind of serves people as a turnkey provider that are leveraging your expertise to help them acquire rental properties. Maybe talk a little bit about that, and then just, you know, other ways that people can kind of use leverage to be successful as an investor.
Sure. So, yeah, as you said, I mean, our business is to sell turnkey investments, and so, but we also have investors that, you know, that maybe don't want to own rental property. Maybe that's just not for them, but they have capital that they'd want to put to use. So we'll partner with them and leverage their money to acquire these properties, to renovate them. Then once we have them leased out and we sell them off to our passive investors, now we pay them a fairly good return on their cash, and they get it back within typically within four months is kind of like the time frame.
Okay.
Usually, you know, we ask for a 6 to 9 month window in case something happens and we don't get it sold quite. You know, we get held up on an inspection with something like that, right? So, and then so there's that side of the business where you can, you know, be a lender. Yeah. And leverage their money,
and by the way, they're leveraging you too, your resources and your knowledge and the systems you have in place to find properties and sell them, right? So, I mean, these are all, what we're talking about here are just different ways to kind of partner with each other or different people to satisfy each other's needs, right?
Correct. Yeah. So they're buying into a system on our end. So we've proven to be able to rehab houses really good. We've been able to lease them, and we're able to sell the houses. You know, and we always do the right thing.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of stories behind that. I was talking to, it was funny you bring that up, because there's an investor I was talking to out of Virginia last week, and he's like, wow, you guys, he found us on our website. He's like, wow, you guys called me back. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I don't know.
Right.
Like, well, I've called like 4 or 5 providers that claim to be like you, and no one's called me back yet. So then we got into a conversation about what we do, and, you know, the returns that I'm like, well, we typically pay between 8 and 10% on the money that we're borrowing. And he's like, well, this guy out of Seattle was going to pay me, you know, 14 or 15%. I'm like, he's like, but he hasn't called me back.
Right.
and so I started laughing, and he started laughing too. And he's like, well, there might be a reason why.
Yeah.
You know, maybe he doesn't do what he says he's going to do. And I think that's the difference. And part of our business model, maybe that's the Midwest in us, but we always make things right. I mean, in rehabs and real estate, rehabs don't go always as planned on timelines, you know, and it might take a little bit longer, things happen, but we just do the right thing for our investors, and that goes a long way. Yeah,
and in your business, and in a lot of businesses that are in the real estate space, I mean, selling turnkey properties, you would much rather have an embedded base of customers that you can sell more and more properties to, instead of having to go find somebody new, convince them to work with you, and kind of go through that whole process. I mean, you'd much rather have repeat customers effectively. Right. And with your lenders, you know, you want to be able to pay them back, and they're asking you, well, how fast can you use the money again? Because I want to do it again. And I mean, that's part of being a business, is being able to kind of do things over and over and over again and build processes. And so the first time you screw somebody, they're done. You know, you're done with them, they're done with you, and that makes it hard to kind of ever scale your business, or really it makes life, you know, not as fun if you have to keep recreating the wheel, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And they, you know, when you teach people, or when you do the right thing by them, they typically will, makes raising money that much easier, because eventually they know, all of a sudden they know 3 or 4 other people that have a few $100,000 that they're willing to share with you.
Right, right. Talk a little bit about just the general kind of, we've had a number of, you know, turnkey providers on the show. In fact, we've had, you know, Nate on, your partner, a while back. But talk a little bit about kind of the turnkey model, and kind of, you know, why it makes sense for folks to work with a provider like you to buy rental properties. And I'll kind of throw you a softball by saying that, you know, the reality is a lot of people that want to own rental properties, the biggest challenge they have is finding those deals, right? And then they have other problems with managing and things like that. But, you know, if you have a job or you have a business, or unless you can go really spend a lot of time focused on finding deals, which is a lot of work and a lot of art and skill in learning that, you know, it makes sense to, you know, kind of what we're talking about here in terms of the theme of the show is leverage other people. But just talk about, you know, turnkey rental providers is really kind of hot over the last few years, right? That opportunity, and it's because people realize how important leverage is. But just talk a little bit about some of the benefits that people get by, you know, working with a provider.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, getting right away, they're getting the local knowledge of the market on where to buy at and where not to buy. And I think that's a lot of mistakes new investors make. I just had a good friend call me he's pretty successful in the financial world, but he's like, and he invested with me, and he's like, hey, this guy presented me a deal, and I'm like, how many deals has he done? And he hadn't done any deals, but it was, and so we ran through the numbers, and it was a negative cash flowing deal. And I'm like, why is this a good deal? But the guy was banking on, it's on the north side of Chicago, and in 3 years it's going to be worth $100,000 more. Speculation, right? So right away, if he would have jumped into that deal, he would have spent, it was an $800,000 property.
Oh wow.
With 20% down. I mean, and the guy wanted him to put the 20% down. Or you buy in the wrong part of town. I see a lot of new investors, they get caught up in what's a 25% return on paper, but you're going to get shot at and everything else, and who knows if you can collect the rents. So the reality, so there's a lot just on the acquisition side. I think we bring a lot to the table, just understanding neighborhoods and where to buy at, and why 25% might not be as good. Even though it sounds good, it might not be the right play.
Yeah.
Buy in a better neighborhood at 12, 14%, and it's safer.
Right.
So that's one reason. Working with contractors and understanding pricing, and what I spend today on my rehabs compared to what I spent 3 years ago. One, just based on the amount of volume that we do. Our contractors know that if they continue to provide good service and get things done on timelines and that they don't have to go out and find another job from someone else.
Right.
So they're able to cut their profit margins because they know as soon as they finish one job, they can get another one done.
That's right.
They get another property coming right at them. So our pricing's a lot lower than what most people pay too, probably by, I would say, anywhere from 30 to 40% a lot of times.
Yeah.
And that just comes from knowledge.
Right.
So, when you tell someone you can get an 80% furnace for $1,200, $1,100, $1,200, they're like, I just spent $5,000. So there's a lot to be said for the knowledge of construction.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then property management, how to lease, how to find a good tenant. And, like when I got started, my dad was my property manager. And I say this in front of him, but, he wasn't good at screening tenants. And he was no better than me, though, right? If I would have been the one doing it, I wouldn't have been good either. Why? And why is that? It's just because that's not what we do every single day.
Yeah.
And good people from the Midwest, if you say you're going to do something, you
trust them, yeah.
But tenants, you can't do that, right? So that's a whole other game. So that's another advantage we have is owning. We used to lease or third party our property management out to other companies, but we've found the most critical part to our business is it's not rehabbing it, it's not buying it, it's really leasing it and then managing that asset for the next 3 to 5, 10 years for our investors.
Right.
That's the most critical part on the communication. So it's I think we provide that service with leasing that the new investors just can't. They don't have the knowledge on finding good tenants.
Yeah, and even if they, my experience with a lot of folks that manage their own properties, back to this kind of leverage topic we're talking about, is there's no way that if you don't do this professionally for a living, that you could turn a property around as fast, that you can get it released as fast. It's just, but people just for some reason just don't think time is money. Like everybody knows that when you say it, but it's like when they say, well, it might take me a little longer to do that, or even if they don't say it, it's going to. It's like, but time is money. Like what is an extra 2 weeks rent worth to you? Or,
right.
So that stuff is critical. And a lot of people, they learn the hard way, right? They do one property or two properties and then they learn the hard way.
Yeah, absolutely. And then they usually come back and ask Blake, can I just buy a property from you?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot to be said for leveraging your own time and knowledge. So I think it's, basically buying into a system that helps our investors, that they just to do it on their own, it's a lot more cost effective.
Yeah.
So
talk a little bit about the phenomenon of just the general turnkey model, and that's a very broad term. I mean, some turnkey providers hate being referred to as a turnkey provider. Some don't. But, just this thing that's really changed over the past few years, which is a lot of technology and a lot of turnkey providers, a lot of more visibility to property managers where you can invest in rental properties. Traditionally, I think a lot of people wanted them to be in where they lived, their hometown or whatever. But more and more, especially, California investors, a lot of other investors are, and really, quite frankly, a lot of people are learning how powerful the Midwest is in terms of cash flow right now, right?
Right.
So just talk about how that's changed over the past few years of whether it's comfort level or technology or whatever it is, to where people are kind of agnostic to geography now.
Yeah, I think, I invest, so I'm on the ground here in Chicago, and then we also invest in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and so I'm on the ground both places. And I think the amount of turnkey, I will have sold 2 properties to a local investor in my entire career as of like the end of this month. So I don't have all my investors that I've sold turnkey properties to in Chicago have lived out of state.
Okay.
Whether it be California, New York, China, Australia, and the same thing in Milwaukee. We just had our first investor buy one property on a local basis. So I think the main thing, as you said, it's technology. Yeah. It's communication is very important. Property management software. And what I found is some people, it really comes down to trust and being able to prove, you have your systems and that in place. I can sit down with an investor and say, hey, we have a 54-step process to acquire, from the time we acquire, rehab, manage, and then, or lease it and then get it managed. Like, we have an entire process in place. Right. And, we have one person that's dedicated to acquiring properties. We have a field coordinator in each area that oversees our contractors. And I think it's really being an open book with our investors and being honest. Everyone, like I said earlier, I think everyone wants to sell hey, this is your return. Right. The big difference is, and I'm always very, I do this on every phone call with a new investor, is like, this is the upside to real estate, but here's your downside. Mm-hmm. Right? Here's your risk. You're buying, there's real people that live in these houses. They break things. We are in the Midwest. I can't control, 4 feet of snow, an 18-inch frost line deeper than it's ever been. Like last year we had, freezing pipes all the time. Yeah. Just so much colder than it has been in like 20 years. Right. So I talk about the downside, and I think when you do that with people and explain like really what they're getting into, it builds a trust that, hey, this guy isn't just trying to sell a product to me and get my money. He's being very honest with me and an open book. So that's really helped our business model. Yeah, great. Well, Blake, we're about out of time here, but if folks want to learn more about you and Midwest Equity Partner, where do they go? They go to MidwestEquityPartner.com. That was easy. Yep, so MidwestEquityPartner.com. Okay, we'll add a link down below the video here. But hey, thanks for your time today. I definitely appreciate you sharing your knowledge and experience. And I think, I guess what I would tell a lot of people that are looking to get started or have been trying to get started but haven't really gotten out of the gate as much as they'd like is to just find other people that can kind of complement your skill set or your financial situation or whatever it is. Real estate, more than just financing, is really all about leverage and finding other people to work with. Absolutely. Yeah. So thanks, buddy. All right. Thanks, Mike. All right. We'll see you around. Are you a member of FlipNerd.com, the most robust real estate investing platform in existence, where you can find off-market wholesale deals and great vendors literally in your market? You can get access to advice from experts and learn about local clubs and events right in your backyard. If not, please visit FlipNerd.com and register for a free account. You can register in less than a minute. It's pretty much the coolest site that's ever existed in the real estate investing industry, so get on over to FlipNerd.com.